Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through Scottish Prism. I hope yours and yours are well. I know I was saying we were going on holiday, but these politicians keep giving us stuff that prevent it. Although I will definitely be going on holiday last week of July, first week in August, because I've got 3 of my youngest grandchildren come to visit, and they take priority over even you in Scotland. They win it. That's why I'm doing it. So that'll definitely, well, we might have some specials for something for you, I don't know. Anyway, let's get everyone in. Well, over there in Edinburgh, we've got Mr. Quinnan. Mr. Quinnan, how are you?
I'm very well now that I've got the mute button sorted out. Good to see you, Roddy. Let's get going.
That's a ticket. Well, and always a pleasure to see you, never a chore. And I don't know where he is, the Scarlet Pimpernel, the Coatbridge Cavalier. We seek him here, we seek him there. Do we guess? Should we have a guessing competition where you are this week?
The Pikey's in Brussels, so and quite happily there. It's beautiful, stunning weather. But, whoa, hello, Moto.
I've got to find myself for this.
Oh shit! I should mute mine and all. Oh no! So in Brussels, not in Japan. I think that's where that hello Moto came from, anyway, or China or something like that. But no, happy days, loving it. The world spins. We're just trying to cling on to it. I think that's the basic rule, isn't it?
No, just clinging on and no more. Some years, that's for sure. And there in the city of Discovery, it's Mr. Petrie. Mr. Petrie, how are you?
Hi, Roddy. We're doing not too bad. That's the first week of the school holidays over with, and I'm still slightly sane, so all good.
What year are you in now?
That's Megan actually going into 5th year now.
So you were, I thought you were talking about yourself here for a minute, Alan. You had me worried. I thought you were a late developer. I knew you were young, but I didn't think you were that young. Anyway, up and Click Manning, our favourite lawyer.
Oh,
Oh, where are we today?
We're
you
on the
start to
road.
imitate Mr. Boswell here and catch us out.
Yeah. Thanks to Chris McElhaney intimating to us that there are no parking charges in Inverclyde, we frequently travel to Greenock. Lovely view of the Clyde at the moment, and about 20 minutes ago Matt took a video of 2 dolphins swimming by. See, Scotland, you can't whack it.
Anyway, there's it. And Eva, not want to pay parking, just shows you the mean Scot thing there. It's bubbling below the surface. Won't even pay the parking fees. I don't know. Anyway, we've got a lot. As I said, it was meant to be going on holiday. It just doesn't seem going to be happening. And by the way, before anyone writes in, this is not gin. It is actually water because it's kind of hot, kind of clammy. Well, you do remember that skip with Ricky floating in the water, remember? When he was doing the lake call, remember that? Anyway, this week, so much happening. Starting with you, Phil, and it came out again, the latest polling, again, as it has been for the last 3 years, independence is way in front of the naysayers. And also in that poll, we also see that the SNP are still in 30%. There's a big, huge gap between those in favour of independence and those that are supporting the SNP. Now, we've been pointing this out for I don't know how long in this programme. When are the SNP going to wake up to that? If they want the 50% plus, they have to start talking to others. And when are the people who are saying, SNP 1-2 going to learn?
Yeah, very, very fair comments and closer analysis of this and contextualised. You look at the lower figure, which is the 48% or 47% that state intended to vote. But this is before there's a campaign. This is before there's even been a campaign, and those who would vote are majority for independence. Then the second one, which is higher, that's over 50%, are those likely to vote plus voting intentions. Again, without a campaign. You add a campaign to that, it's a slam dunker. if you play this right, if you know what you're doing, if you unify and get and mobilize, organize. That's what we need. And we've been saying it for long and weary. We'll continue to fight the fight because we've got to keep doing it. It's just the state of affairs in Scotland right now continues to get to the point. It's going to get to revolutionary status soon, unless and we don't want bloodshed. We don't want a continuation of the despair that are felt, or a spread of that despair, and that's what's happening. We know it. The frontline workers know it. You can see it. You're a taxi driver, a social worker, a policeman, a nurse, a teacher. You're seeing it firsthand. If you're working for people who are being oppressed in this very oppressive society, more and more right wing, you know the pain and the suffering that people are going through, and that will continue to grow, and we will lose good people. We should be focused on making Scotland a great place to live, better for our children, instead of struggling to survive. And it's becoming more and more a fight like this. And what these figures show is that intuitively we understand that we can run our affairs better than anybody else, and all we need to do is to smoke some peace pipes and get the SNP to realise that their philosophy of SNP 1-2 isn't going to work. The good thing is we know that most of the people are beginning to see that, the junior members. The problem is the leadership of the SNP, and more we see the stuff that's happening with Alpa as well. You know, you think that while there's a lot of people in SNP that I like and respect still, there's even more in Alpa that I like and respect. But there are in all parties the dark arts and those that practice politics as their own profession and put their own benefit first. And that is the obstacle, as has been often quoted by many men and women that have went before us. The problem are the Scots. And in our own way, we are very good at shooting ourselves in our foot. And unless we unify and fully understand this and put the people first, then this is set to continue, Roddy.
Yeah. Well, in this programme, this podcast, what we try to say, here's the positive side. There's a majority for independence, Alan. We then go on and say, here's reasons why. There's more reasons, if you didn't already have reasons, why we need to get out of it. And here's what we can achieve. Now, that's what we try to do every week. We try to sort of balance it. And the fact in this poll, the thing is, and you pointed out so many times, there's more people who support independence staying at home than are turning out for elections. The people are really scunnered. That's the problem.
It's a big problem. I mean, even out of this 31% who say they're SNP, where are they? Because they are not coming out at election times. The SNP are polling under that level, which should be their core vote. Because we all know that the vote that you get at big elections isn't the same as what you get at by-elections. You've got a core support that always comes out and supports you. The SNP are losing that. And I think Lloyd said it a few months ago at a by-election, that they've not even got their membership out to vote for them. Now, that is extremely worrying. Why are they not even getting their members in the ward out to vote for them? There is something seriously wrong. But there's two things that's clear within this poll. One, the dream is definitely still alive within this movement. And the second one is that delivery drivers have got a dodgy sat-nav because they're taking us down the wrong rails. It's time the SNP realised this is not about party politics. This is about the liberation of Scotland. And there is only one way that we can get liberation of Scotland, and that is voting independence on the constituency and independence on the list. And that should be done under one banner, and that is Liberate Scotland. So I ask the SNP and ALPA again, put your party politics aside and put this country first, because our children need an independence future. That is the only way they will have a future, if this country becomes independent. Because if we're stuck to Westminster any longer, there will be no Scotland. And that's not just me trying to scare people. You see what's happening now. They're sending people to wars. They're cutting benefits. They're trying to make Scotland unfeasible. And it's not long before they'll get their way. We have to take action now. 2026 is like no other election. We either sink or we swim at 2026. So please, put your party politics aside. We'll fight those campaigns after we get independence. And I'll love the debates after that. But at this present time, 2026, liberate Scotland. It's on the tin.
Oh, just nearly ran out of computer there. That would have been a bit of a disaster. Eva, you know, this, someone's alluded to it, I can't remember if it was Phil or Alan there, but this is despite that in 11 years there's been no campaign for independence. We've been getting booted from pillar to post by the unionists and decried, and the SNP haven't been helping the way they govern, and yet the people still say, we want out. It's just a lack of political will that we have at the moment.
It's a lack of political will, and unfortunately it's also a lack of self-belief on the part of many Scots. And what we've got in Scotland, but people don't seem to always understand this, is an excess of talent and intelligence, experience and ability. And we've also got in every village, every town, every city, multiple working class heroes, everyday heroes. We've got the John McLeans and the Jimmy Reeds and the Mick McGaheys everywhere we look. But these people are mainly silent, or they're cowed because they don't understand that there are actually so many of us prepared to stand up and fight to bring Scotland back into the hands of the people of Scotland. And when I say fight, I mean revolution, but a peaceful revolution. And because I'm sitting in Greenock, I need to read you this very, very, very important passage from recent Scottish history. Between February and August 1981, the mostly women workers at Greenock's Lee Jeans factory defied management intentions to close the plant. At a time when female unemployment in Greenock was 50% higher than in Scotland as a whole, the women argued that their factory was feasible and that corporate greed was the reason for closure. They seized control of the site and they occupied it for 7 months, and they won. They were vindicated. Yeah. The factory was sold. That's people power. That was the power that these women displayed then, and that's what Scotland needs now. Working class leaders that are able to inspire folk to come out and vote and get shot at the voter apathy that has crept in over the course of the past 11 years. Because that apathy is there because people don't have within their grasp, they think, the ability to turn this country right around. But in fact, Liberate Scotland promotes unity because we know that we can turn the country around if and when we vote for independence in what is, in essence, the 26th Holyrood election, as we say so many times. Use it as a de facto referendum, vote for an independence party 1 and an independence party 2, and we'll deliver that supermajority. But we need to harness the power and the belief that people have and create the knowledge and the hope and the optimism that we can actually do it. We're not going to do that by slagging each other off, falling out, splintering. We need to come together under one banner and do exactly what those of us in the independence movement know we can do, achieve independence, nothing less, and sort the rest out later when we can. Because between now and Independence Day, it is absolutely pointless to be falling out about issues like gender recognition, because it's been the worst there. Whether or not we're in the European Union or it's EFTA, what we do about climate change or we don't do anything about climate change, these things are all arguments for another day. The only argument we should be running just now is how to get independence. And that is why the SNP must, as the biggest political party, come up with a plan so that they can be part of a united campaign and deliver independence. Rather than the likes of us week in and week out telling them where they're wrong, it's incumbent on them to be constructive and to join us and hold out the hand of friendship and lead our country into Independence Day.
Yes. Lloyd, you were right in the beast of the belly, if you like, being in Holyrood and being involved heavily as an elected official. But if that, or if you're in business and if you know you've got all this extra capacity, you know that there's 22%, 25% that you can increase by, surely the SPADs should be saying to the leadership of the SNP, listen, we've got this, it's just low-hanging fruit, as we would call it in commercial terms. Let's go and get the low-hanging fruit. And the easy way to do that is to put front and centre independence into the policy for 26. It's so simple. I don't understand why they don't do it, Lloyd.
It's you're absolutely right, Roddy. It's as plain as the nose on your face. But the real positive about this is, again, the people of this country are ahead of their politicians. You know, we talk constantly about the lack of turnout, and I think the lack of turnout is definitely connected to the failure to inspire people on the issue of independence. Now, if you've got that 22% gap between what you as a party are polling and what your central purpose, which is independence, is polling, then one would imagine, or one would expect, that they would immediately jump on that and that 2026 should be the campaign for independence. But I'm not hearing that from the leaders of the Scottish National Party. So I think some of these responses in some of the polls lately are the people telling the SNP to get their house in order. The people are effectively stating, this is what we want. We want independence. 52% of the population of the country, that's what they want. But the only 30% of the population believe that the SNP has the means or is indeed capable of delivering that. Now, the message, obviously, for any campaigner is, how do we get the 22% back? Well, maybe the only way to do that is by a united front, is by the SNP and the other pro-independence parties moving together. Now, all of us think that that's the way forward, but we're getting no indications whatsoever from the SNP or from ALPA that they're prepared to move into some kind of electoral pact situation. But the people are telling them that that's where they need to go. The only analysis of this poll is the people are ahead of us and they want one thing, and that one thing is independence. So they want a campaign for independence, as Phil said, and it's the most positive part of it. With no campaign whatsoever, the ordinary people of this country have come to the conclusion that independence is their future. Now, that's happening because they're talking to each other, because it's clearly not happening because the SNP is talking to them about independence, because they're not. Now, we have to take the excitement out of that. People are clearly talking to each other. People are coming to conclusions, and their conclusion is that this country will be better off as an independent country. Now, if you're a special advisor to the Scottish Government, you need to be knocking on your party leader's door. The First Minister has to hear this. If he frequently says that he's the First Minister for all of the country, well, 52% of your country want independence, First Minister. It's time for you to take the action required to deliver that.
Yep, and it can be done. I've got to speak up for Sovereignty Liberate Scotland, who showed in Inverness that they're standing aside for the good of the cause by allowing Fergus Ewing to get a free run at it. Now, most of us, for example, in Indy for Indy, our politics are way to the left of Fergus's, but we put the nation first, and Sovereignty are the same. They put the nation first. It's a great thing. It's a great feeling, actually, SNP. I would recommend it to you. It feels good when you do it, and that's what needs to be done, Phil. Putting the country before your party's requirements.
Oh, 100%, but we're just not seeing that. It's time and time again, the unification message is being ignored by those in power. And this is the problem. It stems back to a fundamental human feeling or state that we're all fighting. We're all fighting on many fronts, and a lot of people hide it and don't open up about it. But in terms of the political gamesmanship that is played, the one-upmanship and the snouts in the trough, that balance I've often talked about, there is a balance to be had. You want to serve your people. That's what you're voted in to do. You have to follow the government or your party's whip most of the time. There are times when you should rebel if you have conscience, and that's a matter for the individual. The problem we've got here is when, given the political situation we're in at the moment, and we look at the influencers and who really runs the West has become the bad guys. The West is corrupted. The West is being led by people who are more interested in making more money for the billionaires and screwing the people into the ground. The people of the West, as well as everybody else that gets in their way. Ask the Gazans, ask the Africans, ask everybody else. But the world is changing. So what we need to be doing is taking control of our own destiny again. And that means our unification message, we need to put aside the issues, the many issues that differentiate us and that separate us, because that, as has been said by all of us, is a battle for another day. The battle now is for the survival of the West and for the survival of the people of Scotland. Put your own house in order first. Always. Always put your own house in order first. It will never be perfect, but without unification, we are subject to the divide and conquer philosophy that has been so successful in empires down the edges. It's now not so much British or flag waving or American empires. It's now economic empires, and we're looking at empires that are practicing military Keynesianism. They're actually storing so much weapons and making so much money out of weapon production that to continue that military Keynesianism, they have to have continuous war. That is not what the people want. The people of Europe don't want. The actual American people don't want that. But it's time to stand up and take control. And that's why we together are feared. It's always been the case. They can pick us off one by one. They can pick us off by the People's Front of Judea, the Judean People's Front, the Popular Front of Judea. So easy to pick them off. Splitters. It's hilarious, and that was written by brilliant men, the Monty Python crew, because they saw how politics really was, and they saw how splintering is not exist. It's what the Romans want. It's what the establishment want. Fighting each other to actually get what we collectively are passionate for. And sometimes you've just got to take a back seat and say, you know what, I'm burnt out. I need to chill the hell out, but I'm behind the cause, and I continue to support the cause. And that positivity and that unity will win the day. And we won't have everybody on board, and we won't all be facing exactly the same way at the same time. But so long as your heart's in the right place, people, so long as you know that you put your prejudices aside, your preferences aside, your passions aside, other than one, independence, nothing less, that will win the day.
Indeed it will. I know, we keep piling up the reasons. Eve, I'd like to come to you for this next question, because when you stood in the general election last year, you were very much trying to save Grangemouth as part of your campaign. And we were told that they couldn't do it, private company, and it wasn't, it just wasn't viable. And yet this week, the biggest hypocrisy of all, a refinery down in England, who have no oil, ladies and gentlemen, but 5 refineries to refine it in, went into liquidation within hours. Eva, the British government in Miliband had moved to it was so important because energy security, it had to be saved, but not Grangemouth. Now, if that doesn't tell if there is such a thing as a soft no, I don't believe there is. That should tell any Scot exactly where we are in the totem pole. We're just deserted.
We know exactly where we are in that totem pole. It's where we've always been. We are simply a bank that Westminster withdraws from as and when it needs to. They don't want to spend money on us. They don't want to send us back our own money. They don't want to leave us alone to live by ourselves, because they can't, because Westminster needs to continue to leech off Scotland. All our natural resources, including our people, is what keeps Westminster slightly afloat, if you can call it that. Because as we said before, England doesn't have an assembly or a parliament like Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales, because it doesn't need one, because England's got Westminster looking after it. And make no mistake, Westminster is about controlling the UK, but promoting the interests of the people of England. The people of the satellite nations of the United Kingdom don't count one jot. And the proof of this is there on a daily basis, but including particularly the example that you cite there, Roddy, because Grangemouth refinery closed with neither a bang nor a whimper. It just was almost a non-event. People shouted, unions did what they did, some folks supported them loudly and openly, a few politicians, namely Kenny McCaskill and a handful of folk round him, supported him. But beyond that, the rest of the political world in Scotland went silent, and they might as well have all been looking away at the ground, at their feet, and saying, muttering the usual Scottish phrase, "Oh, you can't do that," because we became somehow a cowed nation of people that couldn't fight back when they really needed to, instead of being a can-do nation. You know, go back to thinking about when Alex Salmond was in power, when he was the First Minister. Scotland became a place of optimism, and we had a can-do attitude, and we will try this, and we will go for this. And that applied in so very many different aspects of Scottish life, Scottish public life, especially events that were held to promote Scotland, whether it was the joy that some people felt at, for example, Commonwealth Games, or the delight at seeing the bridge open. You know, there's a whole host of things, education, tuition fees, a whole load of stuff where Alec and the folk around him said, we will do this, we can do this. And he was known as a gambler, and often he was definitely gambling, and he didn't know if he was going to succeed, but he was willing, you know, to throw it all in. Phil's quoted this before, the Kipling poetry about if you're prepared to gamble at all. And he was at times prepared to gamble at all. But that's what the Scots need to learn to do, is to look carefully at our prospects as a nation, look at the potential of the Scottish economy and what we could do for the people of Scotland, and how we could contribute to the world as a peace-loving nation were we independent. Look at the prospects, weigh it up, get a strategy in place, attain independence because the people know it can be done, make it happen, take the chance. Because if we don't, Grangemouth is just the latest in a long line of national disasters. You know, I was criticised during that campaign last year for standing in Grangemouth at all. But Grangemouth and the question of its closure or its remaining a functioning refinery was and remains a national campaign. It's a national shame and a national embarrassment at the moment, and it's incumbent on all within Scotland who care about the Scottish industry to get a refinery up and running in Scotland again. There is no reason why not. The oil is not actually running out. It was going to run out 10 years after 2014, and it's got a long way still to go. We need a refinery. We need our refinery. And if England are entitled to a state-owned or a state-rescued or a state-run refinery, then so much more is Scotland, because we have bankrolled Westminster and England for far too long.
Absolutely. As I say, they've got 5 refineries and no oil, just Scottish oil. Join the dots, people, for God's sake. And on all this, Alan, you know, if we look at energy, the average annual energy costs throughout Europe, look at them. France, 485 quid, Spain, 495. I mean, go through the list. Poland, 150 quid. There, the UK, 2,325. Now, we in Scotland, we've got energy coming out our shuck. We've got it everywhere. Wind, tidal, hydro, even some nuclear, which we don't really want. We've got it all. And yet, look at that price.
Same all the time, though, isn't it? I mean, we provide the stuff, and then we'll have to pay for it to get back. It's always the same. And what does our government do? Top their hat. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Because they do nothing else. But the issue of the refinery in England being saved with taxpayers' money is a massive kick in the teeth for every single Grangemouth worker. Because not only have they lost their jobs because Westminster refused to come out and support them, they are paying to keep the refinery in England open. Because that refinery will do us no good, no bring any money or any jobs into Scotland, but Scotland will pay a percentage of what's been put into that to save it. And it's the same every single time with Labour, Tory, Liberal Democrat and Reform. It's England first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time. I mean, you said soft no voters. Now, I agree with you. I don't think there is any. But hard no voters, do you really think this is in your best interest? Because you're paying for that as well. You keep telling us how much debt Scotland has. The only debt Scotland has is what Westminster have taken out on our behalf. Because when they take out their £1 trillion of loans, we pay a percentage of that, whether we see any benefit of any of that money in our services. We still pay a percentage of their bill. That's why we are in debt. An independent Scotland would not have that. We would be starting from square one. Would be on a level playing field with every other country, and we will be able to run our country like Norway, Finland, Iceland, every other small independent nation. We shouldn't be fearing anything. But unfortunately, Westminster keep throwing out this garbage. Their GERS, which is just a flipping beano, a financial beano. I mean, it means absolutely nothing. So people, just ask yourself one question. How does every other independent nation run their economy, but Scotland can't? Can you answer me that question? Are we really too stupid to run our own country? Christ, we've invented half the things in the world. So come on, start thinking and stop taking the bait from the unionists. If they ask you how you're going to run your country, just say the same way as every other country does, but better than Westminster. Because Westminster is the worst run government throughout the world, because they just keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And it's the working class that are having to pay everything off.
Yeah.
And that, again, is just fact. But even their MPs, Leishman, who opposed the Grangemouth, opposed a few other things. He's what you call a licensed rebel. Labour have a massive majority. So they allow certain one of their MPs who are in very slim majority seats to rebel, to make it look like they're actually doing something. They're not. They're still supporting the government that is doing all these cuts. So waking up. These people are not rebelling. They're conning you.
Yeah. Because that's a factor on this, the Lloyd, the refinery going, and also as I just put there, the energy costs are so high. We've got the highest by quite a distance. But here's the latest. And, you know, if we talk about closing down Grangemouth and keeping open this around Lincolnshire, they did the exact same to Wales with Port Talbot Steel, and they kept open Scunthorpe, we allowed Port Talbot to close. But not only are we paying the highest prices, it's going to get worse, folks, because it's been approved. Ofgem this week approved 24 billion investment. You know, that's to take our electricity down the road, by the way, folks. And you know who's going to pay for it? Try and see if you think it's going to pay for it. It's actually now talking sticking a further 104 quid in every bill, Lloyd. They really are taking the piss.
We're in an incredible situation, Roddy. I mean, when I looked at that table of figures that we had up there, Poland, £150 a year for energy. And we're nearly £2,500 when we've got energy, as in we've all said, coming out our ears practically. No, some of the time I think people get locked in to thinking in terms of their own personal bills. But think about the damage that's done to our industrial base. Think of the problems created for our, we have a tourist industry that we should be proud of, but a tourist industry that's essential to our economy. The effect of increased energy bills, combined with the national insurance hike, all of these things are absolutely destroying the basis of that industry. But also thinking in terms of, they want to grow the economy. This week they're saying the arms business will be the basis of that. Well, how much energy do you need for that manufacturing? How can that manufacturing possibly, without government subsidy, how can it possibly compete? You know, if you're setting up a factory making big bombs to send to the Israelis, then you'd be better doing it in Poland because it'll be cheaper, because the energy levels will be so much cheaper. We have to think about this, you know, outside of just the pressure that this puts on individual families and individuals, never mind individual families, having to deal with bills of this size and the percentage that it takes of people's earnings, an extraordinary amount when you consider the percentage it would be related to benefits. But the real issue here is, if we're going to develop an economy, then in a country that has a massive energy surplus, then surely you use that as a driver for your economy by reducing prices. And there can be there's no focus whatsoever from our Parliament on the broader issues of energy. It's another one of these he said, she said. Instead of John Swinney or the Scottish National Party, current Scottish government, outlining the damage that's been done to our economy, because he keeps on talking about growing the economy, but I don't ever hear them going on about the fact that energy is one of the things which is a brake on our economy, the massive, massive energy prices, and how absurd that is in a country that actually produces energy. But then again, would that not be taking us down the obvious route, which is the debate about independence? And maybe that's the debate that they don't want to have. But this is exactly one of the tools that we've got to inspire the people, to move them towards a vote for independence next year in 2026 by pointing these things out.
Yep.
That they are all interrelated. They cannot be separated out at all. But the absurdity of us, the huge energy producer, having the highest energy costs in Europe it's beyond understanding. It really is. And maybe that's one of the reasons why 52% of the people want independence and only 30% of the people support the SNP, because they've made that calculation.
Yeah, they've joined the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the thing. Not only that, but he's alluded to it, Phil. Lloyd has alluded to it, rather, about that, energy. What a way for us to create wealth. I watched earlier today, I watched a live conference with Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, talking about Ukraine, Iran and everything. And one of the things he mentioned, he said about the self-inflicted damage. And one of them was Germany. He said they got the cheapest gas and energy from Russia. And because of ideology, they've cut it. And they're paying 4 times the amount for their energy that they used to with Russia. And what's happening? And they're buying it from America, incidentally. They're shipping this across the Atlantic. German industries up in sticks and moving to America because it's cheaper for them to manufacture. That's exactly what's happened in Scotland. If we did reverse that and we had independence and we started saying, well, we're reducing the price of electricity by 1,000%, the factories, the businesses, they're all going to start migrating into Scotland. Jobs are created. When the jobs are created, there's a tax base. Once you've got a tax base, you can start doing all the social things, feeding into all the different services that we need. Giving people full-time employment suddenly becomes a possibility. All those possibilities with independence, Phil.
Absolutely. And the great thing about this is a marriage of capitalism with socialism as it was originally intended. Profit is not a dirty word, but fair profits and fair pay for a fair day's work, that's the balance we seek. And we're completely void of that just now. Unless we take control of our own destiny, we're going the same way as Europe. The Germans, you talked about Germany, they've more than doubled their energy prices. That's why they're in trouble. Their economy was focused on high-end energy. That's where you go for quality cars. That's where you go for research. The investment in research and development was staggering in Germany. And now, because the cost of production, they cannot compete with people around the world. The new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, why is this happening, right? He became Germany's Chancellor, right? In a government led by the Christian Democratic Union and its sister party, the Christian Social Union. Merz has previously worked as a judge, a lawyer, and has served as a chairman, here's the critical part, of BlackRock. Germany's supervisory board. And BlackRock is the biggest investment fund, something like 11.5 trillion. And it seeks to retrain Western hegemony in the world. And that's the objective here. That's what's happening. What we're looking at, and we can come on to that in more detail later if you wish. But the problem that Germany faces is its leaders are sold out. They're sold out to basically retaining control of the West with the rise of the BRICS economies. And how do you counter that? Well, you have proxy wars to try and stop the rise of the BRICS economies. It's no coincidence that Russia, Iran, and China are targets. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're now got the majority of the world's population, with Indonesia joining, over half joining the BRICS economy. It has now become, or very shortly to become, the biggest economic force on the planet. And that is a threat to Western hegemony, which means big pharma, the military-industrial complex, hedge funds, investment funds, banks, all who wish to retain control of the billions. And this wealth gap, this is why the gap is getting worse between the people of the West, the workers of the West, and these billionaires, because they're asset stripping, not just us, but they seek to asset strip the world. They seek to a proxy war in Ukraine to destabilize Russia, first of all to control Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, as well as all the heavy minerals and heavy metals, etc., and hopefully to destabilize Russia, regime change, and go back in like they did after the fall of the Soviet Union, when the Americans were allowed to advise them and to sell, for the Russians to sell all the shares to the West. That's what they want, asset strip Russia. That was the target.
Yeah.
That's failed. Then they moved to the Middle East. Israel continues it. Well, we could go on and on. That's a separate subject. But absolutely, we need to wake up. This is the billionaires. I mean, I think there was one joke that I found quite apt was, if we start eating the billionaires, maybe that'll stop things a wee bit. We could help.
Yeah, she's the thing, saying, oh, you can't afford it. I found this article this week, Eva, where they're talking about the cost of a united Ireland would just be $3 billion. And I know for people out there who are minimum wage or universal credit, $3 billion sounds a lot. But in actual terms of governance and a government budget, it's peanuts. And that's just in the first year. It would disappear within a decade. And that's the six occupied counties of Northern Ireland, which have no oil and no gas and none of the natural resources that we in Scotland have. A one-off cost of $3 billion. I mean, that's a price worth paying. Scotland would have an initial price. I don't know what it would be, but it's a one-off, and we'd all be better off just as they would in Ireland.
This is one of these conundrums, isn't it, about people that know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And that's exactly where we are here, because the real cost of uniting Ireland, or the real cost of freeing Scotland, should be measured in terms of the human benefits, not the financial implications on their own, although they are important. But the human benefits are that your people stand taller because your country has, in the case of Ireland, a united and justifiably united presence on the world stage, and Scotland has an independent stance on the world stage and gets to fly the saltire and not fear the implications of the Union Jack. So these are things that money just can't buy. However, if you look at all the budgetary implications for Westminster and for an independent Scotland, there is one inevitable outcome. And it is that an independent Scotland will be far better off than a devolved, dependent Scotland. And sadly for Westminster, their coffers will begin to empty as soon as Scotland stops filling them up. And the entire financial argument about independence and about the warm enfolding embrace of the British Union and the stronger together, weaker apart guff narrated by the Douglas Alexanders of this world has to be contextualised. And the context is that Westminster is a drain on Scotland, not the other way about. And it would be interesting to know the cost to Westminster in terms of the size of their continuing overdraft after Scottish independence is attained.
Yeah, it's, that's the other thing, folks out there. Honestly, for the union, and we get more and more unionists watching here and being snidey in our comments in the live show. And we love it, folks. Keep doing it because it lets us know we're doing it right and we're upsetting you. And that makes us happy because it knows we're on the right track. But ask yourselves this, boys. If we are such a financial basket case, Why do you think they hang on so tight? Try and do that. Maybe get your social worker to explain that to you. But try and think about it. Try and think about it. Lloyd, this, kidding on that we can't make it and it costs you a fortune to set up. It's a nonsense. But here's the thing: that's the British state. The clock's beating us, and I want to try and pull all sorts of questions together here. But the British state, I don't think, has ever been in a worse state. And I just quickly put up this, and this was Jeremy Corbyn and the wonderful Miss Sultana are putting this new party together. This is going to further weaken the unionist vote. There's going to be a splitting of more. You'll be able to talk about splitting votes of the unionist vote, which means going back to 26. Again, there's more opportunity for a united independence movement to sail right through the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an element of truth in that headline, though. Now, there would have been no truth in that headline whatsoever if the Scottish National Party didn't have John Swinney as the leader. But for John Swinney, a Jeremy Corbyn party is a concern, because we know that Labour voters in Scotland, many of whom have not been going out to vote, take a more leftist approach than an awful lot of Labour voters down south. And what they also like is they like a bit of inspirational leadership, and that's certainly not what they're going to get from John Swinney. And I think that's where maybe for the first time in a long time the National have got a headline that actually makes some sense. But the key thing here is, if we're not going to have yet again a British election masquerading as a Scottish Parliament election, then in reality the only way to approach it is by the united front approach. There's no question whatsoever that there are those, particularly the First Minister, who really needs to have a serious think about where our country is going to be in 10 years, because it is potentially possible for Corbyn, a Corbyn-led party, because Corbyn is appreciated in Scotland. In all opinion polls, he always polled better in Scotland than he did pretty much anywhere else in the rest of the UK. The only way to defeat that is by or recognising that if there was a proper Corbyn party presence in the Scottish Parliament after the next election, then the whole focus of our politics will be on how Corbyn is going to do in the next general election in England, when in actual fact our parliamentary elections should only be focused entirely and completely in Scotland. And there's only one way to do that. John Swinney needs to pick up the phone to Jeremy Corbyn and point out to him that if he's going to take part in the Scottish election, then he has to take a position on the Constitution. And that position, the only acceptable position on the Constitution, is Scotland has a right to decide. And if Corbyn's not prepared to go along with that, then you can make no electoral pacts with him. And the only way to address next year's election, reinforced again, is by uniting with all the other pro-independence forces in the whole of the national movement and turn effectively the 26th election into a de facto referendum, or indeed, a much better phrase, a plebiscite election.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what certainly Liberate Scotland people are telling me they want to do. And I agree with this position. With the clock kicking on, because this is important, I want to get to this week, down in Westminster, the MPs voted to prescribe Palestinian Action as a terrorist group for painting some planes that are owned by a hedge fund that the Royal Air Force rent on a PFI type scheme, Phil. Now, two questions I'd like to ask you on that. One, I find that abhorrent that they would decide that these people are terrorists while they're actually helping with the genocide. But the other one is that the SNP abstained. I find that incredible. But the other and most important question I want to ask you, if they can prescribe them as terrorists for painting a few planes, what can they prescribe us who want to break up the British Union? How quick and how easy and how long before we're described and proscribed as terrorists and outlawed?
It's just a matter of time when we get organised and are seen to be organised and to be again a serious threat, which does not include the SNP leadership, just in case there's any doubt in that, because they are not a threat to the establishment. That's why we're being left alone at the moment. But as soon as we unite and we remove those who have been bought or blackmailed, which is everyone in the current SNP leadership, then that is just a matter of time, Roddy. You're absolutely right. And just for people who are not clear here, MPs have voted in favour of legislation to prescribe Group Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. 385 votes to 26. Would the SNP vote have made a difference in the vote? No, but it would have showed that they actually stood up for what Scotland wants and what Scotland believes. They did not do that because they do not represent the Scottish people and our wants. Now, this order amends the Terrorism Act 2000, and now it's expected to be signed by the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who's been paid, I think, 210,000 for her campaign by the Israeli lobbyists, so
Yeah.
she's bought as well. So this will come into effect later this year. Once in effect, Palestine Action will become supporting them will become a criminal offence, with membership expressing support for the direct action group punishable by up to 14 years in prison for spraying paint. Now, there's a hearing on this, but this is an absolute disgrace. And and then we're looking at that. That's Palestine Action, and we're looking at kneecap, and we're looking at our entertainers who have principles. They're the ones that are standing up and voicing their objection to genocide and their support for anyone that stands in genocide. And notice that what we're getting here is, I mean, I'm buying more and more kneecap gear and merchandise. We should all do it. We should go to their cons. Everybody that stands up, support them. They're the voice of the people, not the politicians. So that's why I support. I'm going to buy a Chuck Yarla balaclava very shortly and be getting it on and wearing about Scotland. It's like, come on. It's time to stand up and be counted. We support. I'm looking for Palestinian badges. I will be wearing them because we cannot stay quiet. Like I said before, I cried when I watched Schindler's List. I wasn't there and couldn't do anything about it. But when there's a genocide ongoing now, what are you going to tell your grandchildren when they ask you what you did? It's an absolute disgrace. And John Swinney and the SNP should hang their head in shame for not standing up against this travesty of justice.
Yeah. I mean, it goes all against all the thoughts of democracy, Alan. I mean, I'm totally, because this is July, and of course, as we know, the marching season with the people who were very closely associated with the paramilitaries and terrorism, they weren't prescribed. Now, I abhor it. However, I protect and I support their right to be able to do it. That's what you do in a democracy. You might not like it, and I don't like it, but I defend the right as offensive as I find it. And I think, the more we restrict, then, what, as I say, what's next? Who's next? Anything the state doesn't like? That can't be democracy.
It's not. And they've been trying for years and years and years to try and stop demonstrations. I mean, even the Scottish Parliament stopped you from having a demonstration at the Scottish Parliament, which was built to demonstrate. They don't like the people coming and telling them, you're wrong, we want this changed. But let's make this quite clear. Vandalism is not an act of terror. It is a civil disobedience, which is the right of every single citizen of this country. It is a human right to be able to sorry, as a civil right to participate in civil disobedience against your government, especially one that is going down the road that our government is. I mean, we see the Terrorism Act being used, or I should say abused, on TikTok all the time. Police searching people under a terrorist act because they are videoing a police officer doing their duty. Now, is it not them who keep telling us, if you have nothing to fear, why don't you want to be videoed? But they're now using powers under the Terrorist Act to stop this from happening. This government is going down a very, very dangerous route. And if we sit back and are quiet about this, because they're taking on someone who possibly some people don't support. They remember what the words, they came for the trade unionists. What did I do? Nothing. They then came for the next one, then came for the next one. by the time they come for you, there will be nobody else left. So don't think this has got nothing to do with you. This has got everything to do with every single citizen. Governments are there to do the job that we elect them to do. They are not there to control our lives. They are our employees, and we should remember that. We are the employer. We put them in place, and we can remove them every 4 to 5 years. That's maybe something we should be looking at as well, so as we could remove them quicker than that when we have a rogue government like what we have now. But the Scottish Parliament should be intervening here as well, because Scots law is different from English law, and we should be making it quite clear that we are not accepting this, and instruct the police to allow demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations. Well, we've got to accept the civil disobedience. I mean, if things don't go our way in 2026, then I'll be promoting more and more civil disobedience, because we've got to be able to express our opinions one way or the other. And the governments just now are trying to stop that from happening, because information and knowledge is power.
Now, I would suggest that possibly, though, it would be viewed, and I know you say it's civil disobedience, I'm all in favour of it. I would think probably what they did, Eve will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more of a criminal damage they've done. And that's fine. They should face consequences for that. That's the price you pay if you support something. You know, if you go down to Faz Lane and get arrested, you know you might get fined for whatever, for breach of the peace, the old favourite. But that's the price you pay. But they should be allowed to. Calling them a terrorist is ridiculous. But we get more and more control, Eva. I mean, the state broadcaster refused to broadcast doctors in Gaza because it would have not pleased the British government, and more importantly, it would have upset the Israeli government. But Channel 4 did it, and it's had an amazing effect. But how dare the British government censor what we can see and can't see? I mean, I still say the same. If I want to watch RT or whatever, I should be allowed to do that. It's not the right of the government to tell us what we can and cannot see and watch and listen to.
But the British government must continue to operate in that fashion, because the truth is too dangerous. They think we cannot handle the truth. Well, in fact, it's they, our actual national oppressors, if you want to call them that, who cannot handle the people knowing the truth. In part because Britain remains America's poodle, and in part because they are in thrall to the Israelis, and in part because they think the rest of us aren't bright enough to work out what's really going on behind the scenes and behind the meetings and the warm handshakes and the mild promises that things are going to get better. And, you know, to put that in context, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist, but became the symbol of peace and reconciliation and freedom. So I think that we need to be extremely careful and very, very cautious at labelling anybody by any particular label when they are simply doing something to register their grave discontent with very serious issues happening in the world that our government seems at times to actively promote. It certainly doesn't do anything to de-escalate what's happening in any of the war zones in the world at the moment. They seem signally incapable of doing that. They seem to have forgotten the meaning of the word diplomacy. And instead, as I think it was Lloyd said earlier, they've spoken about how the weapons industry, the war industry, not the defence ministry, but the offence ministry. You know, we should have a war office, because we seem to always be helping somebody in some sort of war if we, the British, aren't actively causing these wars. That's going to become the linchpin of the British economy because of the amount of money that it means in the country. I mean, how can it be that a British Labour government is banning people who are objecting to genocide, jailing people for writing text messages, sending money, bombs, you name it, abroad to prolong wars, allowing access to British airspace, whether it's at Prestwick Airport or elsewhere, allowing access to bases in Cyprus, and yet they don't want the people of Britain to know what their money is being spent on. We're no daft. We can see what's happening, and it's high time that the people of Scotland particularly saw how extremely important it is for us to get out of that union. We've mentioned in previous programmes about the grave risks that there are in terms of fast lane, etc., and how there's a target painted on the back of every person living in Scotland. And one day, somehow, sometime, that target's got to be removed. And the quickest, easiest, safest, most peaceful way of doing that, the most optimistic way of doing that, is regaining our country's independence and actively promoting peace in the world.
Absolutely. We'll talk about, I mean, Kneecap and Bob Villan, Lloyd, you know, they're getting cancelled and called terrible things, and they've got to get rid of them. They're trying to stop, they don't want to let us demonstrate outside the Parliament in Edinburgh. They're slowly but surely taking away all our rights to complain about anything or say anything or make a tweet or make a Facebook. And I'd like to show you this. This is from the JFK. He said it and put it in those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Is that the road the British are trying to push us down?
I think there's a great deal of truth in what John Fitzgerald Kennedy said. I don't think the British are trying to push us down this road. I think they're just too stupid to see what they're creating. I also think that there's a direct correlation between the amount of money that Israel has poured into New Labour in the past 10 to 15 years and their reaction to anything and everything critical of the Israeli Zionist genocide committing regime. You know, all the examples that we've discussed here are all directly related to Israel. And it seems that this Labour Party has the ability to take action on behalf of Tel Aviv far more quickly than ever takes action for the ordinary people of this country. Simply think people of disability, the WASPy women, the two-child cap. But you know, the list is enormous of our people being punished so that Britain can play the big man on the international stage. But it's more than playing the big man here. This is insidious. There's no question that the influence and power that the pro-Israeli lobby has within this particular government is deeply, deeply damaging to democracy. And the specifics of lumping Palestine Action in with two hardly known terrorist groups who have never carried out any actions whatsoever in the United Kingdom and using that sandwich of it, as it were, to force through on the vote is utterly despicable. And the fact of the matter is this was done for Israel's benefit. The harassment and the attempt to cancel Kneecap was done to benefit Israel. The attack on Bob Villan is done to benefit Israel. The refusal to show the program, the documentary program, which was eventually shown on Channel 4, that was the decision made by the British Broadcasting Corporation, the propaganda wing of the British government, to benefit Israel. All of this, our civil liberties, are being flushed down the pan simply because of the level of influence that exists in the British Labour Party and elsewhere. I would suggest possibly also north of the Solway and the Tweed. Israeli influence is pernicious, it's dangerous, and it ultimately is a threat to our civil liberties.
Yeah. And on that, one of your colleagues, Phil, who thinks, I want to quote him there, a rise in defence spending will kickstart our industrial future, said Barbara Blackford. When he says our, who's he talking about? We don't exactly have a huge defence industry in Scotland, do we?
No. That's an interesting one. But first, a quick comment just to finish on the Gaza issue and the medical stuff, the stuff that Lloyd was talking about. Please watch now. It's on zeteo.com, ZETEO, and it's a Gaza Doctors Under Attack, the full film. The BBC funded it to a great tune, a big price, and refused to release it because of the Israel lobby. And it is carefully gathered evidence that passed all BBC scrutiny to show that indeed the Israeli government were targeting, including missile attacks on a doctor's house, and when they didn't die, a drone followed them down the street as they moved, and as an Israeli drone followed the doctor and his wife and kid down the street and attacked them again. And he's one of the few survivors of the family. This has got to be seen. And the powerful film the BBC refused to air is out now, released globally by Zeteo, and also I believe Channel 4 will show it. Watch. If you still don't believe that there's an evil dictatorship practicing genocide, you should watch this. As to Ian Blackford, well, what can you say? Ian's too much aligned with the British establishment, Roddy, as you well know, because British politicians are bought. And as the old owner of Harrods famously said, they can be bought for very little. And so, in my opinion, Ian's not worth listening to on many issues. However, on this one, there is some truth in what he's saying, and here's why. Europe needs to increase defence spending with the emphasis on defence, not offence. Why the US previously? Why? Well, the US previously supported NATO expenditure by paying 70% itself. Now, should NATO expenditure come down? Yes, we should be bairns, not bombs. However, the actual very little that Scotland, an independent Scotland, would pay, we should pay something, and Britain should pay something for its defence, not offence. We need to put our own house in order and stand on our own 2 feet. So I support, for example, a European army, but one that works for Scotland. And initially, given the position of Britain, Germany, and France as Americans' chihuahuas, little aggressive dogs, I would not support NATO. First, as an independent Scotland, we would join with Scandinavia and Ireland with a more peaceful objective and a focus upon collective defence, not offence. The people of Germany and France want this too. So when they sort their governments out, once we sort our government out, i.e. get our own and stand on our own 2 feet, then we can build a stronger economic, military and cultural ties with our neighbours for the betterment of all, because that's where philosophically, socially, and on principle, our values are similar to these people, not the governments that have been bought by those that control the establishments. So Blackford, nah, not a guy I would generally value his opinion.
No, well, I disagree with you on a European army. I would have no truck with it. I would like us to be completely neutral and have no truck with any of these warmongering. I mean, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, have recently opened an office in Tokyo. My geography is not great. However, that went through me. And they're looking at somewhere in Singapore as well. It went from a defensive shield to an offensive. And it's just part of the American foreign policy, actually, and it's got to go. But going back to domestic matters, Alan, and reasons why we, again, as you know, I was a big abstentionist and still am from the English Parliament. But this week, Stephen Flynn, his bill didn't get a second reading for the WASPI compensation. That doesn't suit the English, so no, we're not having it. Scots, remember how they told us the voice for Scotland, a stronger voice for Scotland in London? It's no point in being there, Alan. None whatsoever. Bring them home.
That's exactly what should happen. I mean, we should not even be standing for Parliament in Westminster because it does not represent us. It is just a talking shop for Scots where they go down and English just laugh at them. That's all that happens. They can do whatever they want. I don't think there's ever been any time in the history of Westminster where a Scot has made a difference. I mean, the Labour Party stood on an election campaign telling these WASPI women, vote for us. We will look after you. We will make sure you get the compensation that you're entitled to. They then got elected and they did bugger all. They just, except for slap them in the face. But they've done the same with the disabled people. I mean, even with all the bitties that were taken out, the welfare bill should never have gone through last week. That was another kick in the teeth. And you've got this idiot, the branch manager in Scotland, the Scottish Donald Trump, if you like, agreeing with Starmer in England and then saying he's going to overrule it in Scotland.
Yep.
I mean, come on. Do you think we don't hear you when you're in England, speaking to your boss, sucking right up his backside? That's all you're doing. Sarwar is all spin with no spine. And we're needing more politicians with more spine to take on the establishment. And these people in Westminster, let's just get them out of our country once and for all. If we want a good defence, the best way to do it is get rid of the warmongers, because it's Westminster that's bringing us into the wars. Let's get the Union Jack off our back. In 2026, liberate Scotland. It's on the tin. If you want independence, there's only one way to do it. Liberate Scotland.
Yeah. Well, folks, the clock has beaten us. A couple of things I just want to put up. Great story. I don't know if you guys saw it, from Italy. And this is a chemical plant that had polluted the rivers and the water, drinking water in Italy. And they were jailed the executives were taken to court and jailed for up to 14 years, or 17 years rather. Meanwhile, in the UK, the water companies are literally putting shit in the rivers and the drinking system, and they get a pay rise, a dividend rise, and the ability to go and get more money from the state. Corporate socialism. Well, the people in England pay more money for their water. That's the kind of union you're in, folks. We should be jailing these bastards like the Italians did. We should be jailing them like they did in Finland, the bankers, or Iceland was it? I can't remember. One of the up the north. But there's hope, as Alan said, as everyone said here. Liberate Scotland, and here it was in Dundee, folks. I don't know if you've seen it yet. The Liberate Scotland flag is flying over the city of Discovery. Now these are available in all good. No, they're not. If you're interested in one of these for your own garden, folks, we've got plenty of them. We ordered actually, but they're there. Get in touch, and you can get them. Okay, so this is the first week of our holiday. We've enjoyed it by just doing the usual. So politicians, please don't give us something. I really want to get on my holidays. So I don't know when I'll see you again. I've got a funny feeling it might be sooner than I actually plan. Until then, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.